Now, in most 10-man groups, I would say the boss that's giving people the most problems, hands down, is Ambershaper. Quite honestly, if you get past Ambershaper, getting Scottejaye down is a bit of a joke. I actually would say this is true for both 10 and 25-man. Having cleared Heart of Fear Heroic on both 10 and 25-man, I can honestly say the pain point of the raid is 100% Ambershaper. So I just want to talk through and show you exactly how we do it, and this strategy works on both 10 and 25-man Heroic. Now, I know of many different tactics on this boss, like using 2 tanks and just basically dealing with the mechanics as they're intended, but using a 3rd tank on both 10 and 25 Heroic is probably something that you've heard about, but it's really important that that 3rd tank is doing it properly, because if they're not doing it properly, there's absolutely no point doing it. So I'm just going to flick through a VOD of our most recent 10-man Heroic Ambershaper kill and talk you through exactly what I'm doing, and then if you're that 3rd tank, it'll make life easy for you. And if you're not that 3rd tank, maybe share it with your guild. Just before we get into the video though, be sure to like and subscribe. I've got another video coming out tomorrow, just giving you a bit of an update of where I'm at and why I've kind of been MIA for about 3 weeks now. But also come check me out over on kick.com/Scottejaye. I'm streaming pretty much every night and more or less exclusively Mr. Pandaria, with a little bit of retail sprinkled in, getting ready for midnight. So let's have a flick through and have a look at Ambershaper as a whole. Okay, so starting from the pool, there's a few things you're looking out for here. If you look at my timers on the right hand side, you can see Reshape Life. Now this is when you actually get transformed into a construct, and in phase 1, this is only going to target your tanks. You can see we're running 3 tanks, so we've got me as a Brewmaster, we've got a Blood DK, and a Protection Paladin. Now, ideally, you want all 3 tanks to be able to manage the construct properly, so you're not relying on RNG to see which one ends up with it being the 3rd tank, because you're going to wait for the 3rd Reshape Life. So this means while it's important to get lots of damage out on the boss, you're most likely going to have to stop. So there's no point worrying too much about a pre-pull timer, there's no point even pre-potting, because if you've got reasonable DPS in the group, you're going to have to hold for that 3rd Reshape anyway. Now, like you can see in the middle of the screen, the boss is currently on 4 stacks. Now, the point of using 3 tanks is so you can maintain those stacks all throughout phase 2, but if you're doing it properly, you're also maintaining stacks on the monstrosity. Now, in the first phase, it's important to keep these stacks going, and the only way you're going to be able to do that without letting explosions go off, because that's absolutely something you can do, so you can just heal through where you press number 2 to interrupt yourself when you're in a construct. You can just not press number 2, so you save energy, which means you don't need to drink amber, but then that just puts extra stress on the raid, as in healing wise, which you're not going to need if you do it properly anyway. So what we do is actually drink 1 puddle per tank. So the first 2 tanks that get turned into a construct, so you can see it's me now, I'm going to be keeping stacks up on the boss. When my energy drops a little bit lower, like down here that you can see, I'm going to drink a puddle. Now, obviously, I'm interrupting myself with 2, and now I've drunk 1 puddle, people can safely get me to 20%. Hence why I just stop and have a drink. Now, all I'm doing at this time is spamming 1 on the boss, making sure we don't push into the phase because we haven't had the 3rd Reshape Life yet, and I'm making sure that the debuff is going to last long enough on the boss before the next Reshape Life comes out. So I left when there was around 12 seconds on the debuff, meaning the next Reshape Life gets plenty of time to be able to keep them stacks going. Now, this point of view is actually me just tanking the boss, and it wasn't me that got the 3rd Reshape Life. So they're in charge of keeping stacks on the boss and stacks on the monstrosity, and basically all of the ambers that are on the floor are exclusively for that person. Nobody in phase 2 that gets turned into a construct should drink any puddles whatsoever. In fact, their only job is to target the monstrosity, and if there's less than 6 seconds before the explosion comes in, so this monstrosity explosion here, then they need to hold their number 1 ability. If there's more than 6 seconds, they can happily just keep spamming 1 on the boss and making sure they interrupt themselves with 2. As soon as they've got that first interrupt done, ideally they want to stay in and get another stack or 2 on the boss, but really they should be at 20%, ready to just break themselves out. So the more confident the people in phase 2 are with the construct, the better it is. But if you want to keep it simple, basically anybody who gets turned into a construct in phase 2 should be in long enough to interrupt the boss once. But if there's any time left after the interrupt to be able to get another stack out to keep it refreshed, just to gain an extra 10% damage for your raid, then you should absolutely be doing that. Now, this just rinse and repeats all the way through the phase. Like you can see, currently there's 25 stacks on the boss, there's just about to be 26, and we're already up to 8 on the monstrosity, meaning the monstrosity is dying very quick. So we'll just have a quick look at one of the VODs where I was actually the monstrosity, the permanent construct, and I'll talk you through exactly what I do and what you should be doing if you're the third construct. So like you can see, we've just gone into the second phase. Now I'm using two macros. I'm using one to target Ambershaper and one to target the Amber monstrosity. Now this just means I've never got to worry about tabbing and accidentally tabbing to the wrong thing. I've never got to try and click on things to target them and end up clicking on something else. These two macros just scrolling along the bottom of the screen, they're very basic, but they make it very easy. Now I just have one on shift 1 and one on shift 2. So all I'm doing is shift 1, pressing 1, shift 2, pressing 1, then interrupting myself with 2, and then drinking puddles whenever I need them. But doing it like this means I'm maintaining stacks on the boss at all times, and then also building stacks on the monstrosity. Now the person that gets transformed into a construct in phase 2, their number one job, like I said earlier, is to make sure they interrupt the monstrosity explosion. Now sometimes it lines up where actually, as the third construct, I'm able to also interrupt the monstrosity, but you don't ever want to be holding on to one to be able to do that. It's more important that you're keeping the stacks up on both targets. Because the debuff lasts about 15 seconds, there's a 6-second cooldown on pressing number 1, which means you've got a few seconds to play with, absolute maximum where you can afford to not be pressing 1. But ideally, you need to be back at the boss or back at the monstrosity after going and drinking a puddle, ready to press 1 as soon as it comes off cooldown. So at this moment in time, I'm spamming 1 on the monstrosity. Now I've pressed shift 1 to activate my macro to target Ambershaper. I'm pressing 1. Now I've pressed shift 2 to target the monstrosity again. I'm pressing 1. At this moment in time, I'm thinking about drinking puddles. And that's it. Rinse and repeat. Just targeting between the monstrosity and the Ambershaper, making sure you're pressing 1 on cooldown, alternating between the two of them, pressing 2 when you need to interrupt yourself, and just topping off on Amber when you've got nothing else to press. So if you know you've just hit 1, you've now got 6 seconds to go and drink a puddle and then get back to the boss. What your tank should be doing to help you out as well is dragging both of the bosses around to the Ambers, because they know that's where you're going to be heading. So as long as you're always following the bosses and your tanks are always heading to Amber, you're never going to have to run too far to actually drink. Then just looking at a different kill here where it actually went wrong, you can see the stacks are very low on both of them. The stacks have just dropped on the monstrosity. This is actually still going to be a kill, even though we're going into phase 3 with only 11 stacks. That's because the next important part of this boss fight comes from the beacons at the end. Now the beacons are kind of a non-mechanic as long as your construct, as in the third construct, so your permanent construct that's your tank, does everything right. Because if you're going into the last phase with like 30 plus stacks, the boss is going to die very quick. You're going to wait until the damage reduction buff that he actually has on him fades, and then you're going to send Lust and just absolutely blast the boss. But like you can see in this run here, we've got very limited stacks on the boss, and it's still going to be a kill just because the people that are doing the beacons handle it right. So you can see in the middle of the screen there that it was Groove and Loft that have got the beacons on them, and they're running to the back of the room. Now they're just going to bring those two beacons together without ever letting the beacon touch them. They'll dissipate and they'll run back into the room. And that's literally just rinse and repeat. As long as the two people that are getting the beacons use their eyes and move out, work out which one's focusing on them, and then position themselves so the beacons are going to overlap. We just use 4 corners of the room. So the two people go to the opposite corner to where their beacon is that's targeting them, and then the beacons are always going to come together. But because the beacon's only got a 30-yard explosion range, you also do have the option of just dragging them 30 yards away and just sacrificing the two people that are actually targeted by him. Or you can just literally kite them around the outside of the room, and when they switch target, because they do occasionally switch target, especially if someone dies, then just be ready to react and you get out and start kiting the beacons around as well. It's kind of inevitable that the beacons will touch at some point if you're just running around the room anyway, but really if your permanent construct tank is managing the stacks properly throughout phase 2, phase 3 literally just doesn't matter. Now there is another tactic that I've heard about that makes life pretty easy, and that's actually having the people that get turned into the construct in phase 2 to be the ones that are in charge of keeping the stacks up on the boss, while the permanent construct is the one that's actually interrupting the monstrosity. Now the reason I don't like this is because if you do it exactly how I've said, where you're literally targeting one, pressing 1, targeting the other, pressing 1, interrupting yourself when you need to, then you're getting stacks on both bosses and never having to hold. I find doing it the other way, there's still a chance of stacks dropping off the boss if they target the wrong thing and start pressing 1 on the monstrosity when it's meant to be on the boss, and then you're going into the last phase with one hand tied behind your back. Now one other thing you might notice here is my UI don't look a complete mess. I mean, it could look better, but when it comes to actual nameplates, the only 2 nameplates I can see is the boss and the monstrosity. Now if you use Plater, I'm going to put a link to a script in the description below, and this script basically removes nameplates from everything else in this fight, other than the boss and the monstrosity, so it just makes it look a lot cleaner while you're permanently in the construct. Now this means if you're not comfortable using the macros to switch between the two targets, it does make it a bit easier to be able to click on the nameplates, but honestly, I would get used to using the targeting macros because that's foolproof, nothing can go wrong. Even though the nameplates are just the boss and the monstrosity using the script that's in the description, you still could click on the wrong thing. Using the macros just eliminates that completely. Now, I know many of you have probably already killed Ambershaper and you may do it in a different way, but this is how we do it, and it's very easy if you've got 3 competent tanks, so it doesn't matter which one gets turned into the construct. You're not waiting for that one right tank to get it, and yeah, you're wiping 10, 15 times before the right tank becomes the construct on the 3rd reshape life. Now, if this video helped you in any way whatsoever, be sure to like and subscribe. If you want any tips, tricks, or want to know the strategies that we use on any of the bosses in Heart of Fear or Terrace, let me know which one's in the description below, because I'm back now and you're going to see regular videos again. I've kind of got my no life in Mists of Pandaria out of my system, so it's back to business as usual. So again, be sure to like and subscribe. Make sure you come check me out over on kick.com/Scottejaye, where you can see me killing all these bosses live and tell me how bad I am, and I'll see you on the next one.